In 1952, at 76 years old, Carl Gustav Jung produced his most controversial work in a singular burst of creative energy. Answer to Job emerged from a transformative experience. Jung wrote this book while ill after a high fever. The experience was so intense that he himself described it as an inner earthquake that shook his foundations. This revolutionary book investigated the essence of God, especially the divine shadow aspect. It was an obsession that had fascinated him since earliest childhood. Jung declared that he had waited 40 years to write this book. He was deeply impacted from childhood by reading the book of Job in the Bible. He discovered that Yahweh was unjust, committing malignant acts by letting himself be persuaded by the devil. This revelation profoundly marked his understanding of divine nature. Answer to Job was born from an obsession that accompanied Jung throughout his entire existence. It began as early as 3 or 4 years of age. At that tender age, Jung had a terrifying vision of a subterranean divinity. This experience profoundly marked his understanding of the shadow aspects of the divine. Jung's father suffered from deep religious doubts. He died struggling with his faith, in a spiritual battle he could never completely resolve. Jung considered this truly tragic. His father merely believed in God, but didn't really know him through direct and personal experience. Later, Jung relates that Job's problem had been prefigured in a dream. In this dream, he visited his father who had died long ago. His father took a large Bible bound in bright fish leather. He opened it and began to interpret a passage with extraordinary speed. Jung couldn't follow the interpretation. The speed and erudition of his father in the dream exceeded his capacity for understanding at that moment. When asked about the happiest moment of his life, Jung gave a surprising answer. He said it came after working intensively on Answer to Job. He was sailing in his boat on a tranquil Sunday. He dozed gently and then had an extraordinary experience that would change his perspective forever. His father appeared, touched his shoulder gently, and spoke comforting words. "You did the right thing, and I thank you for it," he declared with love. In that transcendent moment, Jung felt he had redeemed his father's religious struggle. He completed a cycle of spiritual understanding that transcended generations. Jung later observed that he would gladly revise all his books. However, there was one notable exception. Answer to Job would remain untouched. In this work, the theology explored in the Red Book found its clearest expression. It represented the apex of his spiritual and intellectual journey. The work became one of Jung's most controversial. It unleashed, according to him, an avalanche of prejudice, incomprehension, and atrocious stupidity in academic circles. When asked how he could live with such knowledge, he responded disturbingly, "I live in my deepest hell, and from there I cannot descend further." The Book of Job is considered the oldest in the Bible. It focuses on a righteous man whose faith is tested by Satan with divine permission. Job loses everything in his life: material wealth, beloved family, physical health, even the support of friends is withdrawn cruelly and relentlessly. His desperate cries for justice are not heard by the heavens. Satan's cruel wager must proceed without any interference or divine compassion. Despite his evident human frailty, Job knows he confronts a superhuman being, an immense power, yet easily provoked and apparently unjust. Job laments bitterly, "He multiplies my wounds without cause." He also declares, "He destroys both the innocent and the wicked without any distinction." Refusing to betray his moral conscience, Job courageously cries out, "I desire to argue my case with God." He maintains his integrity to the bitter end. Aware of the vast disproportion between man and God, he pleads desperately, "Will you torment a leaf driven by the wind?" He questions with deep pain. What's most notable about Job is that he never doubts God's fundamental unity. However, within this unity, he perceives a deep and disturbing conflict. God allows the innocent to suffer without apparent reason, but Job is certain that somewhere within God, justice must exist. This insoluble paradox leads him to extraordinary hope. He hopes for a helper within God himself who will defend him against God himself. Throughout this terrible suffering, Job remains faithful to his convictions. He becomes the archetype of the faithful servant who courageously confronts divine injustice. It's striking how easily Yahweh let himself be influenced by Satan. He became insecure about Job's faithfulness without any valid reason. The cruel experiment with a wager over a powerless man is deeply disturbing. Divine action seems so cruel that we question hidden motives. Could Yahweh harbor some secret resistance against Job? Human weakness had given rise to a self-reflective consciousness that God lacks. The fundamental idea in answer to Job is revolutionary. The pair of opposites is united in Yahweh's image indissolubly. God is not internally divided, but is a complete antinomy, a totality of internal opposites that coexist in constant creative tension. This paradox is an essential condition for his absolute omniscience and omnipotence. Love and fear, though apparently irreconcilable, coexist in the heart of the divine. Jung discovered that medieval philosophers had a fascinating image of God. It pointed to a complexio oppositorum, a mysterious combination of opposites. Nicholas of Cusa called this coincidentia oppositorum, coincidence of opposites. It describes the coexistence of contradictory elements within a single divine being. Job confronts exactly this terrible and paradoxical dilemma. He believes that God will help him against God himself, presupposing divine opposites. Such opposition must be expected whenever we confront immense energy. There can be no dynamic manifestation without initial generating tension. The monotheistic impulse tends to construct a unified image of God, an anthropomorphic representation that denies divine contradiction and complexity. As a result, it's strange and painful to accept a paradoxical image of the divine. But such acceptance reveals profound truths about the nature of reality. Jung saw the union of opposites in the mysterious figure of Abraxas, the god difficult to understand, whose power is greatest because invisible. From the sun, Abraxas extracts the summum bonum, the supreme good. From the devil, he extracts the infimum malum, the supreme evil, uniting both in totality. But from Abraxas comes life, completely indefinite, writes Jung, the mother of good and evil, transcending both in superior unity. Abraxas represents the transformation of the Western image of God. It unites the Christian God with Satan in a revolutionary and disturbing synthesis. Jung questioned deeply, how can man live in the belly of God, if divinity itself only attends to one half of human existence? The Book of Job forms an essential part of Christianity's divine drama. Yahweh's wrath was well known through ancient scriptures. He was a jealous guardian of morality, especially justice. He demanded to be praised as righteous and maintained intimate involvement with humanity. However, Yahweh broke his sacred oath with David. This seems like a profound betrayal that violates divine integrity and causes moral injury. Jung saw Yahweh's demand for praise as disturbing evidence. It revealed a personality dependent on external validation, lacking true self-reflection. Yahweh is not imperfect or an evil demiurge, but a complex totality. He contains justice and its opposite in a paradoxical and bewildering unity. His existence, despite immense power, is surprisingly fragile. It depends on human consciousness to become real and meaningful. The conflict intensifies due to an unprecedented factor in history. A mortal man, through moral behavior, unconsciously surpasses the divine. The creature had surpassed the Creator in an extraordinary cosmic reversal. To Job's horror, he sees that Yahweh is less human than man himself. Divine actions, driven by unconsciousness, cannot be judged morally. This lack of reflection allows the coexistence of goodness and cruelty. Humanity must not be destroyed as before, but saved. No new human being must be created, but only one, the God-man. The second Adam does not proceed directly from the Creator like the first. He will be born of a human woman in an inverse and redemptive process. Christ, the new Son declared by the Father as satisfactory, will be extraordinary. Both mortal man capable of suffering and God himself incarnate. Christ's birth, though a singular historical event, has always existed in eternity. In the pleroma, past, present, and future exist simultaneously in unity. The Catholic Church believes that dogma can develop progressively. This happens through the continuous guidance of the divine Holy Spirit. Christ promised to remain within the disciples forever. He would also send the Paraclete to lead to truth and facilitate divine realization. The Holy Spirit's work continuously expands the incarnation process. It creates many brothers and sisters who share deep kinship with God. Divine incarnation requires necessary continuation and completion. Christ, due to the virgin birth, was not completely empirical human being. He remained outside and above common humanity in problematic transcendence. The wrong done to Job can only be corrected through empirical incarnation. This act of atonement is performed by the divine Paraclete. Just as man must suffer from God, God must suffer from man reciprocally. Christian ethics, by creating insoluble conflicts, brings man closer to knowledge of God. All opposites are of divine origin and nature. Man must carry this heavy existential burden. He becomes a conscious vessel for the divine conflict that unfolds in human history. Suffering arises from the inevitable clash of opposites. The Christian symbol of the cross perfectly reflects this cosmic and personal struggle. The suffering Redeemer is positioned in the middle of two thieves. One goes to hell, the other to paradise in symbolic division. Jung considered the traditional idea of privatio boni absurd. This doctrine sees evil as mere absence of divine good. Psychological experience shows different and more complex reality. Everything called good is balanced by equally substantial and real evil. When God incarnates only in his luminous aspect, an enantiodromia becomes inevitable. Unilateral tendency generates powerful counterposition in the unconscious. This may be the profound meaning of the Antichrist's coming. This shadowy figure arises due to the very activity of the Holy Spirit. In the Apocalypse, John witnesses the storm of the final times, a premonition of tremendous enantiodromia that shakes the foundations of reality. He could only understand this as final annihilation of darkness. He didn't see that the power of destruction is the darkness from which God separated himself. Christ appears with eyes blazing like burning fire. A sharp sword comes from his mouth in an image more suited to battle. The second coming brings Christ on an imposing white horse. His robe is dipped in blood in a terrifying vision of final judgment. A mysterious woman appears in heaven, clothed with the radiant sun. The moon is under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars adorns her head. She is pregnant, and a threatening red dragon intends to devour her child. The child is born destined to rule all nations with authority. This child, born from Sun-Moon conjunction, is not Christ's return. It represents new divine manifestation, a second Messiah for a new era. It symbolizes the union of light and darkness in totality. It represents our psychic and spiritual completeness that transcends traditional dualities. Although the divine child has already been born in the eternal pleroma, its temporal birth requires human recognition. It must be consciously perceived and declared. The true reason for God's incarnation in sinful man lies clear. It originates in the transformative encounter between Yahweh and Job. The apocalypse closes with the Hyros Gamos, sacred marriage. The Lamb unites with his bride, the shining New Jerusalem. This union represents Sophia, the wisdom that will reunite with God. At the end of times, the original separation will finally be healed. Jung teaches that it's useless to praise the light if no one can really see it. It's more necessary to teach people the fundamental art of seeing. To learn this essential art, we must integrate a great part of our own darkness. This requires painful self-reflection and courageous work with the personal shadow. The goal is not to remain mired in darkness indefinitely, but to overcome it consciously using goodness and moral strength developed through experience. It makes a significant difference if someone understands what they're living. Knowing what you're doing and accepting responsibility for your actions transforms everything. Unconsciousness is never accepted as a valid excuse by nature's tribunals. There are severe penalties for remaining in a state of spiritual ignorance. Hence, all unconscious nature yearns for the light of liberating consciousness, but simultaneously struggles frantically against this very illumination it seeks. Conscious realization of the hidden confronts us with apparently insoluble conflict, but symbols from the unconscious show the possibility of miraculous reconciliation. The difference between natural and conscious individuation process is tremendous. In the first, consciousness doesn't intervene and we remain victims of fate. In the conscious process, darkness is progressively illuminated. Consciousness gains scope and perception, allowing upright walking toward the goal. The encounter between conscious and unconscious must ensure something fundamental. Light must not only illuminate darkness, but also understand it deeply. The true moral criterion is developed consciousness, not external law, not social convention, but intimate understanding of personal and cosmic responsibility. Can humanity bear the tension of opposites until final union? Reach a more enlightened new era without succumbing to darkness and self-destruction? Only time will reveal the answer to this crucial question. For now, we must not despair, but continue fulfilling our duty consciously. We must strive to become beacons of genuine light, guide others who navigate the same existential darkness we all face. The enlightened new era doesn't come without immense challenges, but it represents the necessary evolution of human consciousness toward divine totality. If this content awakened your curiosity about the mysteries of the human psyche and the nature of the divine, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell to not miss our next explorations through the deepest territories of mind and spirit. Share in the comments your reflections on this journey through Carl Jung's revolutionary work. Thanks for watching this video, and see you next time.